Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this is episode 318. I am joined, as always, by my co-host Prez, that is at _Presidente on Twitter. Prez, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. It's a slow time in the hoops world, so I'm just subsisting off of Dylan Windler highlights and things like that. So that's how I'm doing.
Yes, this is a good time. I have enjoyed not watching any basketball. I have enjoyed watching no Dylan Windler highlights ever at all. And
Casual.
yes, I am casual, and I plan to continue that behavior. But before we get started, I do have to make a few announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strickland on Instagram. We're posting all kinds of new content on there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are and you haven't done so already, please hit like and then subscribe to the channel. That would be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which is available on our website. Check that out. That is at thestrick.land. There's a link to the store on there. You can find hats, t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it. We got it. Check that out. Again, that is on our website. And then the Strickland has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There is a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, this podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to the Strickland Mailbag, hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, a.k.a. the Doug Bag, alongside Dallas and Miko. You also get access to the Strickland Discord, where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There is a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. There are further tiers. There is a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits like listening in on pod recordings, some merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day. Whether you choose to subscribe or not, none of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline, which is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and match reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. We had a plan for the pod, but there was confusion over time zones, and we are freelancing this, but we do that most of the time anyway, so whatever. I don't know. The Knicks signed Dylan Windler to a two-way contract. Is that it for Knicks news this week? Basically, I think that was it.
Quentin Grimes working out with JJ Redick, baby. Hot off the press.
Yeah, these are the things that are happening right now. Emmanuel quickly was working out at the Sanctuary. Is that in Malaga in Spain? Yeah, that place looks awesome.
It's the players. It's owned by the Players Association.
Yeah.
That's a pretty fucking sweet deal.
I do gotta say, I feel like Quick has he's got he's got some clout. I don't know. He's always working out with guys, and I'm like, I didn't know you were like that. He's like with Donovan Mitchell and Jaylen Brown, and
they're all buddies, man. They're all buddies. That whole crew, and they all fuck with Johnny Bryant, Coach Johnny Bryant, and they're all psychos who are like, well, at least Quick. I can't speak on. I don't follow the Instagram stories of the other people like I do Quick, but Quick is really like, this is how him and Julius really have it how you're supposed to do it. It's like grueling work at like the rise of the sun, and then like chill in your picturesque, infinity pool in fucking Spain or whatever, and just like enjoy your life. Like that's, if you're gonna go hard, that's definitely the way to do it. So salute to all the Knicks out there working hard.
Yeah, they seem to be working hard. RJ Barrett has FIBA coming up. What is that? And you had like the day count, so I don't know. You tell me.
The first warm-up exhibition game, I want to say, is the 9th. Let me check. I have it right here. Yeah, the 9th in Berlin versus the Germans. So your son, Franz.
Oh, is Franz playing for them?
Oh, yeah. Dude, remember that was like the last time he played for them, that was like the real hint. That was like the first sign of like, oh shit, is he better than we thought? Like,
No. That was your first hint. I knew.
That's true. For those of us who don't have blood relation to Franz Wagner, so not Mo Wagner and not Schwindy Poo, that was our first inkling. So they got one versus Germany. Then they have in also in Germany versus, I don't know, 2 other teams they haven't said yet. And then they go to Spain. Then they play Spain. Then they play the Dominican Republic, which has more NBA talent than I thought. So these teams, this FIBA tournament,
you gotta get Puerto Rico up, bro.
I know, bro. We're fucking down bad, man. We used to have like 1 or 2 at least, and now I don't think we have any. It's rough.
Carlos Arroyo's got to get out there, man.
We got a couple kids in the in like high school about to go to college, but Carlos too old, man. He been carrying us on his back for too long. He's earned the chance to rest, man. We can't keep putting him to work.
You need to do what like China did and just give citizenship to like dudes.
Spain, that's what Spain and China do all the fucking time. Spain doesn't need to do it, and they do that shit anyway.
Apparently, I was hearing. I think that like not Slovenia, but it might be Slovenia. Yeah. It's one. I think they did that with Anthony Randolph, didn't they?
Yep. That was Knicks legend insane. Anthony Randolph. Yeah. Well, it's because he played with a bunch of the Slovenians just by coincidence in his time in the Euro League. So I guess he just kind of built that relationship with them. And fuck it. If you need a big finisher with unlimited potential that he's never going to reach, then go get you some Anthony Randolph.
Yeah, look, I got to say this. The record will show I was fighting the good fight that Franz Wagner was a much better prospect than Scotty Barnes. And I feel vindicated by that after their respective second seasons in the league.
Yeah, everybody knows that after 2 seasons in the league, you can close the book on these sort of debates.
You can. Scotty Barnes can't shoot. He's older. Fuck him. He sucks.
He's stuck in Toronto.
Yeah, he could really, I'm just.
That offense is going to be ugly, bro.
The teeth are rough for him. I want better for Scotty there.
Even if you like Scotty, if you just look at what the Raptors are doing, you're like, this is not how you do good by Scotty. Just given his skills.
Yeah, they're I don't know. They really, I have no idea what they're doing with their team.
I don't think they do either.
No shooting. They have Gary Trent Jr. I think he's like their one.
They have
shooter.
Gary Trent Jr. and 15-year-old Grady Dick, and that's it.
Yeah, which is like, look, I like Grady Dick. I actually think he's going to be really good, but I don't think he's going to be really good today. Right. And like, I don't know, they're fucking stupid. I don't want to talk about them though. I do want to talk about another team in the Atlantic Division. Yeah, we could just talk about teams in the Atlantic Division because I feel like the 2 most interesting teams this offseason anyway are both the Celtics and the Sixers. But I think
the Sixers
Boston,
really.
I mean, because I have no idea what's going on with them. We'll talk about them a little later. But I want to start with Boston because Jaylen Brown.
They're definitely the most fascinating team. I totally agree.
Yeah, so Jaylen Brown signed a 5-year, $304 million contract that's fully guaranteed. It has a trade kicker, which is odd and weird and like might not actually matter that much.
Is that not normal for max guys? I'm genuinely asking. I have no fucking idea.
The trade kicker, I think it's normal, but the way apparently like it's unlikely that it will be for the normal full amount that a trade kicker would be, even if he gets dealt because of whatever. I don't know the specific. I just know that
it got some funky structures in there.
There's things going on. So again, 5 years, $204 million. I just want to say look, Zach Lowe is a fine gentleman, and I do think some of the quality of his product has gone down because of his extensive, let's say, Julius Randle-esque minutes load, one might say. And
you're definitely carrying a lot of weight out there for ESPN in multiple mediums now.
He's doing a lot. But like did this. He had like a fucking take, right? Because everybody's got to have a take. We have takes all the time. He had a take on like the Jaylen Brown contract, and it was just like, oh, like what were the Celtics gonna do? Like, I mean, sometimes you just if your two best players are wings and they kind of do the same things, you just gotta deal with it and figure it out. And it's just a contract that it's fine. Like, I think that's just a fucking cop out. Like, I think that's bullshit, and I'll think it's bullshit for a few reasons. You can trade players. This is a thing that occurs in the NBA. I think Jaylen Brown has been a very valuable trade commodity for years. And we know this because he's been rumored in various star trades for years.
He's been a good player on a very good contract for some time.
Yes. And so I think I reject this for a few reasons. One, you don't it's not like the best players in your team. Well, once they're the best players in your team, it's just like, oh, well, those are the best guys in our team. We just got to fucking keep them and figure it out around them. You're allowed to trade the best players on your team also. That's a thing that you can do. And I forget this offseason. Like, they've had opportunities to trade him. We know they kicked the tires on trading him last summer to Brooklyn for Kevin Durant. That was a thing that came up. And obviously that was a thing that Jaylen Brown was apparently not too happy with. And like, just that alone proves the point that, yeah, you didn't just you're not forced to play. You're not forced to commit to building around Tatum and Brown for the next however many years. Like, you have agency in that choice. That's not forced upon you. Like, nobody's sitting here being like, oh my God, well, look, Knicks fans have all kinds of fucking opinions about Julius Randle, right? The one thing I think we can all agree is that Leon Rose at this point is choosing to build with or around, however you want to phrase it, Julius Randle. That is an active choice that is being made. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. Personally, I would like to move off of him, but that is the choice they're making. He has agency in that decision. The Celtics have plenty of agency. If they think there's fundamentally some shortcoming of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, which I do believe personally, they can make trades. They can trade Tatum if they wanted to. They can trade Jaylen Brown. Like, they have this option. They have chosen not to exercise it at various points. And then the second part of it is like, oh, well, what are you going to do once you get to this point? You have to give him that contract. And again, this is just bullshit to me. This is a $304 million contract. The idea that you have to just give that to a guy is ludicrous. That is absolutely stupid. And it's the exact type of thing people would kill the Wizards for, right? We had to give it to Brad because, he's a coveted free agent and blah, blah, blah. Okay, but you don't actually have to give the contract to Brad. And you certainly didn't need to give him a fucking no trade clause, which is not relevant to this conversation. So congrats to Brad Stevens for not giving Jaylen Brown a fucking no trade clause. Whoop-de-doo. But the idea that you had to give him this contract is ridiculous. Like, I'm sorry. I cannot stand that idea. This is the same type of asinine logic that has gotten Sean Marks the most favorable coverage that could possibly exist for a man that pissed away he pissed away the proverbial golden hand, right? But people were like, oh, he didn't have a choice. He had I'm sorry, you have the choice to not sign Kevin Durant. It's a tough choice. Not saying it's easy, but you have that choice. You have the choice not to sign Kyrie Irving. You have the choice not to fire your coach to appease them. You have the choice to do a lot of fucking things. You definitely have the choice to be like, hey, I get DeAndre Jordan's your pal, and it's cool if he wants to come here, but we're not giving him no $40 million fucking contract. Like, you have the agency to make these choices. This is a multi-billion dollar industry for being real. Let's not act like these guys that are in these positions of power are just pawns that are being moved around the chessboard by fate. No, they have the agency to make decisions, and we can evaluate those decisions. People can disagree on that stuff, and they should. Obviously, it would be stupid if we're all just like, well, I agree, great job, let's go home. No, but I just think this Jaylen Brown thing has been presented for a while. Well, look, if he gets if he makes all NBA, they're just going to have to give him that contract. And that's bullshit. You don't have to do anything. And the second Damian Lillard was on the table, like you should have been, in my opinion, looking to trade Jaylen Brown to whatever third team can get the assets, can give you the assets to then send to Portland to get Damian Lillard, because that to me is what they actually need. But that's just my thoughts on it. I'm just like very annoyed by the idea. But it's like one of the things he even had in his tweet was like, well, does it even, it's like, is the contract good? Does it matter? It's like, yeah, dude, it probably matters if a fucking $16+ million a year contract is good or not. That's usually like a kind of a fucking important thing. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
So I think I don't fundamentally disagree with anything that you said. I think what you see here is really a failure of imagination on two fronts. The first is like regarding the Celtics trading for Dame, that involves calling his bluff, right? Blah, blah, blah. And maybe.
By the way, I'm very comfortable calling his bluff. If I'm any GM in the league, I'm like, I could be fucking, what's the worst market to play for? OKC. I could be OKC or like fucking Charlotte or Utah, and I'd trade for him, and I'd be like, you're not sitting for 4 years. Like, we know this. So you can, do your thing and pretend like this, like you might sit out, but we know once those paychecks start getting cut, all of a sudden guys have a habit of turning up.
And beyond the money, like,
yeah, he's not
Dame,
like that.
Dame cares about public perception, right? Which is fine. Like it's not a good or bad thing. That's just how he is. That's how I am in my life. Not that I'm in the fucking public eye like Damian Lillard, but like that's fine, whatever. And he would totally play. I think the collective consensus which has formed in the league to not do something like that is weird and odd, but I understand it. I'm not saying it's justified. I'm just saying I understand it because there's a sort of fear that goes with that like you don't want to be the first team to have that shit backfire on you. And that's like that because if that does backfire on you, it is a career altering for a GM or a president move in terms of sinking it. And then it's the type of thing that in theory would set your franchise back a long time. Now, I'm with you. I think it's like a 99.999% chance he plays because he's not built like that. There are stars who I would be like, no, don't do that because they don't give a fuck. But
yeah, like Harden, like the Harden thing
sure.
I don't really like. I know there's this idea of like, oh, Harden he's gonna be in shape or he'll play fine because he's gonna play for a contract. And
Harden truly doesn't care, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean like he
prioritizes something else.
He's just like, I'm gonna play basketball and I'm gonna do what the fuck I want to do, and y'all gonna have to deal with that shit because I'm James Harden, right? So like, whatever, cool. And but with Dame, like, it's just really interesting to me that like the closest. You're better at like remembering transactions throughout the league than me. I feel like the closest thing to this was the Paul George OKC situation. It's not like Paul George was like, I don't want to play for OKC, but OKC, that's like the one thing. So it wasn't quite as intense as like a star being like, this is my list or this is my team I want to go to.
Yeah, and I think the thing that worked for OKC is like the price they paid was also just. It was literally Victor Oladipo and Sabonis, who like he was the 11th pick. He had just finished his rookie year. I get that, like, but Paul George's an all NBA talent, and you got to remember, like at that point in time, right?
Sabonis wasn't Sabonis yet,
and not just that, like you got to remember at that point in time, Kevin Durant had left the summer prior. Russ has this crazy MVP season. Paul George, really, really good, obviously. Coming back from his injury, so he comes back. He's looking good now, and it's like, well, they extended Russ, so it's like, well, we're gonna try to win. So if we're gonna try to win, like, shouldn't we just do this trade? Because how many times are we gonna get an All NBA talent? And It's just like it's not the same. I mean, the closest thing.
No, it's not the same. Yeah.
The closest thing is probably like Durant last summer, right? Because he asks
last
out.
Summer.
Yeah.
Oh, Durant, you said.
Yeah, Durant last summer, because he asks out. The Nets are basically like, look, we're not going to trade you. Like that's it. And he played. And like, I think, to me, whatever I say about KD, like, KD wants to play. He's not a guy that sits games. I mean, he sits games, but he sits games because he's hurt. He doesn't sit games just because, like, he's doing
he can
James
play.
Harden
He's probably playing.
Right. He plays, and I think Dame is wired that way. Like, he can, demand trade and all this shit. Like, I fully expect, if Portland just doesn't trade him, I fully expect him to show up at training camp and be there and, like, be a professional and do his job, because that's what he does. And, like, look, he's 33. I get why he wants out at this point in his career. I'm not totally gonna begrudge him that.
Of course.
But like, he's facing, like, his basketball mortality, and I think that's why he wants out for a reason. But that's also the incentive for him not to just sit out, because it's like, all right, how many years do I have left in the NBA? And not just in the NBA, but, like, playing at the level that I'm at.
Once you're as old as he is, it's like what happened to Kobe. Like, that shit could just end at any minute, and then it's just a plummet off of a cliff. So, like, I totally, those are all reasons why he would definitely suit up. I was more thinking about previous analogies to this situation, just because, like, I really do think it's one of those, like, I don't want to be the first team to do it, and it's kind of irrational, but it's also kind of rational. But the odd thing is like, one of the things that has fascinated me about the NBA for years is the situations in which very good teams change their risk tolerance, right? Like, we talked about this on a lesser scale with Kristaps, right? That's basically what they just did with the Kristaps deal. Was like, okay, we're trading this steadying force, flaws and all, Marcus Smart, for Kristaps, who's been healthy for 2 years, but is also not the kind of athlete who just physically you have precedent for staying healthy, just because it's hard to be Kristaps and stay healthy playing basketball.
How many people are 7'3" and play
exactly
basketball?
There's no blueprint. There's no blueprint for Kristaps. Like, they try, and he's been healthier the last 2 years. So whatever he's doing, I hope he keeps doing it. Actually, I don't want to wish injury on him, but if he got hurt, it would benefit the Knicks a little bit. Anyway, I'll say this. So, like, they decided we're, going to trade for this much higher upside, in my opinion, player with a little more risk, or a lot more risk, depending who you ask, than Marcus Smart. Cool. And then they decide, because I'm sure they've talked about trading for Damian Lillard, because that's what front offices do. Like, you in the quarters of their offices and their discussions, all of the things are on the table. Everything's on the table. That's just how the NBA is. Just because you don't hear about it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Like, you just have to bounce these ideas around. It's your job. And the Boston front office, for all the Knicks we picked, they're professionals. I'm sure they bounced this shit around, and they decided, no, we don't want to be the first team to do that stuff. So they were okay with the risk on one occasion and the other. And we've seen this similar things with the team that always comes to mind for me is Philly, because historically, like, they, even dating back to before they were good, during the process, like, they're just okay doing the easy gambles, like tanking or signing Joel Embiid, or we need a guy who's sort of like a guy, so let's get Tobias Harris, and like stuff like that. But for harder decisions, they haven't really explored all the ways they could put a really good team around Joel Embiid, right? That's not why, but that's a contributing factor to why their teams have constantly underachieved in the playoffs, in my opinion. So I do think it's kind of fascinating to me that Boston decided just forcing the issue with Dame wasn't worth it. And I think, if I had to guess, there's two factors. One is the risk.
He's also older.
And then I was going to say, two is just like, forget like how can we maximize Jason Tatum's championship window in the next 2 years before we got to pay him? Like Jaylen Brown is going to put asses in seats for longer than Damian Lillard. Like that's just what it is. Dame is older, like you said, by a lot, by almost fucking 10 years. So like that's the sort of floor from a business side that they're considering is like, okay, like whatever happens in the next fucking 5 years, we're probably going to be very good for all of those, for the duration of this contract, right? Like that. So it's a really conservative decision in that sense. And I'm not saying Zach Lowe and other people, other Celtics fans are considering all of these things that I just articulated to them. Like trading for Dame, and I'm not saying this is correct. I agree with you. I think Dame is exactly what Jason Tatum needs, and on terms of on the court, but like trading for Dame is not even a feasible thing in the minds of many people, and I think that includes Zach Lowe because nobody's done something like that yet, right? Like the instances of just like randomly going high risk for a player like that are very limited, right? The Kawhi in Toronto was like a situation that's not quite analogous, but kind of like it in a way where you trade a face.
And I mean the Spurs, I don't care what anybody says, they fucking rage traded him. Like they did not get the maximum return. They wanted they did not want to send him to LA and make him happy. They literally think quite literally, I'm pretty sure geographically, Toronto is the furthest place from LA in the league. Pretty sure. Yeah. Like they quite literally sent him to the opposite of LA. Not in America, cold, definitely no beach. Like it's the opposite. And I mean they fucked up. I think they're very fortunate they got Wemby because I mean, you know, if we're gonna be fucking for real, like they've been doing absolutely nothing for the last like 4 years. Like I get that they were, they tried to do like the fake compete thing with DeRozan, then they moved off DeRozan 2 years ago.
Nothing they've done is inspiring. Like even their recent picks that I've liked, like my son Devin Vassell, like that's great. He's a guy. Like there's nothing where they've like turned a double into a home run, right? Like
and they burned, like, I mean, I understand it wasn't totally their fault, but like they took a huge risk on Primo. He's not even in the fucking league now because of his off-court bullshit. Like, like they've just been drafting dudes and not really, like Lonnie Walker. Okay, they kept him for 4 years. Did they get anything out of that? No. Like they've just been hanging out, and the Wemby thing probably saves them. And I think,
of course,
that's huge for them. But like, yeah, I mean, ultimately the point is that trade was a bad trade, and it really did set them back for a while. But to go back to Boston, like I just think the Boston thing is just like I get the age thing. I think that's
real quick before I forget. The other thing I was gonna say is like to go back to my original point of failure of imagination, like the failure to imagine the possibility and benefits of trading for Dame is one way that manifests, but another way is like, people are gonna ask, okay, who are you gonna get that's better than Jaylen, right? If you assume Dame is off the table, and I think that's actually a very valid question because I don't, as listeners know, with how I treat the Knicks, I think for most teams taking the whole like, oh, take one step back to 2 steps forward is imagination fantasy basketball talk, and most teams are not trying to hear that shit.
It requires very specific circumstances.
And exactly, and it's a lot harder to pull off, and it's a lot riskier than people think. And
you gotta have a lot of equity. Like the reason the Spurs were able to negotiate, like basically trade DeJounte Murray, an in prime alleged star, just more or less for draft capital. The reason they were able to get away with that is because they're literally Greg Popovich and RC Buford, who have been there forever and have won 5 titles. Like, the owner is never firing them, so they have the equity to like take that risk. Leon Rose,
and that to be clear to me, I don't view that as like, oh, we're gonna take 1 step back to take 2 steps forward. That was we're rebuilding. We're taking 5 steps back and we're starting from scratch. It just so happened that they got Wemby,